Hi YouTube fans. My name is Ashley Crowley, and the reason why I'm doing this video is because I feel that due to the amount of children that are silent every day, that I wanted to give my own testimony on the account of my experience with Planned Parenthood. Um, so I guess I'll start off by saying that in January of 2009, I had unprotected sex with a man that I'd been in a relationship for nearly 2 years. He promised me if I he promised me if I ever got pregnant that he would marry me and do the right thing. He fantasized verbally on a daily basis what having a child with me would be like and the names he would pick out when it finally happened, and I believed him because I never thought that he would abandon me, and I trusted him because I was in love with him. I was 26 years old, and he was 23, and we'd had sex numerous times before without me getting pregnant. So when I missed my period at the end of January, probably less than 2 weeks after our first time having sex, I discovered I was pregnant. It was a huge shock. And I remember that panic was the first emotion that settled in for me. Immediately, my mind was pointing out the problem areas of my life, the fact that I was depending on my parents for stability, my job being at risk, the underlying truth, the father of my child lives in another country. Secondly, I'd begun to try and force myself to believe that the tests were producing false positives until I began to notice the early signs of pregnancy. And that's when everything started to change. And all I remember was how I experienced no joy in discovering that I was pregnant, especially after confessing to the man I'd been in a relationship for years that we were expecting. The moment I told him I'd turn a test positive, he told me I was making them turn positive because of the emotional wreck I'd succumbed to. And in the 2 weeks he'd gone back to his country where he lived, he told me that I missed my period told me that I missed my period because I was stressed out, and that if I relaxed enough I would have it. And for about a week I believed these false hopes that he was filling my head with until my period was severely late. Um, Before I continue, I do want to add, and I'm sorry that I didn't include this in the beginning, that this is going to be broken down into two parts because it gets gradually more worse with the details. So this is just kind of like an introduction about what happened. But I'm not here today to boast how I'm pro-life. I'm not here to bash the father of my child, who has always been anonymous, or tell you how Jesus became my redeemer. Obviously, I am pro-life and an abolitionist in addition, but this video is specifically being made to give my detailed version of what my personal experience with Planned Parenthood was like. And also a message of hope to other mothers out there who have silenced their own children's lives the same way that I did mine. I want this video to touch the lives of many in any way that it can, because even though a child is no longer here, that doesn't mean their story doesn't exist. No one should ever feel ashamed in withholding their despair and should rather voice it to promote knowledge to those who will consider abortion, because their own personal experience will be no different than thousands of others, because we still have our voices. Sorry, my webcam is acting up. I was 5 weeks pregnant when I walked into the Planned Parenthood clinic in February 2009 with my mother. The receptionist asked why I was there and if I had an appointment, in which I told her that I had a confirmation of pregnancy from the state of Virginia, my evidence from the Women's Health Department in hand, and was told that I would need to verify for their own records by being administered one of their facility tests. So I was given a specimen cup and pointed to the bathroom that was in the waiting area of the front desk. I was not allowed behind the desk to use the patient-only restroom. I had to use the one in the front office. Let me make this very clear before I speak further. I hadn't even explained to them the nature of my walk-in visit, and the moment I showed them my proof of pregnancy that had been issued to me by the Virginia Women's Health Department, they had me taking their pregnancy test before anything else was discussed. I remember asking them if I could speak to a doctor because I was rendered the urinalysis because I had no health insurance at the time. And they prompted me that after the test results were received that someone would speak with me. So less than 5 minutes later, the test results came back positive, and I was led back into a room with one of the facility nurses who performed an ultrasound, which I later found out was to discover how ripe I was. She pressed the applicator into my abdomen with all her strength because I was severely dehydrated and huffed out loud when the last time I had drank water was, telling me that I had the option since most mothers chose not to look at the screen where the fetus would appear. I couldn't understand why someone would choose not to see their baby, and also found it to be odd to be told such a strange thing from a medical professional. I remember seeing Erin for the first time after being able to run my hand across my abdomen many times before and feel the hardening occurring on my belly. I remember feeling warm, and I remember smiling because Erin was no longer just a thing of my imagination. She was no bigger than a pumpkin seed, and I called Erin my little jellyfish from that point on because this seed-like form was balancing so perfectly on a transparent bed that looked exactly like a jellyfish's body. Even the stem that was connected from my body to theirs looked like a tentacle that would hang beneath it, and it was one of the most excruciating moments of my life because I felt by just staring at Erin that feeling happiness was forbidden. The nurse froze the image on the computer and printed it out and paper clipped it to my file and proceeded to tell me that I was 5.5 weeks along. This was the pinnacle of my visit to Planned Parenthood, because before anything else proceeded, I was asked if I wished my mother to stay for the remainder of my visit or have her wait in the lobby area. I wasn't underage, and my mother had made it very clear that she wasn't going to let me have an abortion. Although the nurse had assured me that the earliest they could do a suction abortion was at 7 weeks, when there was more substance to the growing fetus. And I want people to understand the validity of what this means, and also understand what a fetus is, because it's getting taken so out of context, and I think people are forgetting what the definition is. Right now, I'm 26 years old. I'm a young adult in my human life. A fetus is a stage of a human's life. It is still a human being because last I checked, human beings give birth to human beings, and ultrasounds provide us with an inside look inside a woman's womb. My ultrasound was a tool of premeditated destruction that was used to determine life, estimate the life's relevance, and also scheduled when it could be terminated. Planned Parenthood intentionally separated me from my mother because they knew the state of helplessness and hopelessness I was feeling and told my mother to go to the waiting area because I was of age and for her to stay would breach patient-doctor confidentiality. They're really sly. When the interview was over, which was only 5 minutes or so, the nurse asked me what I wanted to do, and I told her that I didn't know. So she calmly explained to me what services Planned Parenthood could offer me, and abortion was the first topic that was spoken. She told me that a good portion of women my age who were unsure of what choice to make often take the route of medical abortions or surgical abortions, and that women further along in their second trimester, which is usually 12 weeks or higher, were referred to Richmond, Virginia to have surgical abortions since local anesthesia was required for the procedure. I asked the woman what their adoption programs consisted of, and she shook her head and told me that they didn't have such programs, that I would need to look elsewhere. This is when she truly sunk her hook into me, and my decision eventually was chosen with. She told me if I had my abortion that everything I was feeling, the sadness, the doubt, the uncertainty, fearfulness, that it would all subside. And I could move forward with the knowledge I needed to protect myself in the future when I had sex. She told me it was convenient and inexpensive and completely safe. And I left Planned Parenthood with what I brought with me, but I never felt inclined to ask what they would do to me if I chose an abortion. I never knew the steps or the tools they would use, and I never even bothered to ask how painful it would be, which anyone would ask when having any type of procedure to their body. All I had to take home with me was a lot to think about, and for another week and a half, that's all that I did was reflect what I wanted to do and find out how much it would cost to have Erin killed. Um, that concludes part one. Stay tuned for part two.